Hey guys, Pedro here to do my favorite 20 albums of 2020. It's that time of the year. Everybody's making their lists, everybody's sharing them with the world. And by the way, if you're watching this video, let me know what your favorite albums of 2020 are. Use the comment section below. Let me know what your favorites are. I'm sure your list will be different from mine. These lists are always very personal, but I think it's really an interesting exercise to go through each other's lists because we may discover some bands, some albums that went under the radar. There was a lot of music in 2020, and it's nearly impossible to check out absolutely everything. So now that I said that, let's get into my top 20 albums of 2020. Starting off at number 20, we have Enter the Realm with Redneck Vikings from Hell. I love this band. I love these guys. And this album was an absolute surprise to me. I thought they were going to go in one direction, and they went in the complete opposite direction with this record. Having said that, the quality of this album is undeniable. It really showcases what kind of musicians they are, that they can be diverse, they can have an eclectic approach, but still release a very strong album from top to bottom, and that's exactly what you're going to get with this record. Now at number 19, this is a debut album by Yelvik, Welcome to Hell. I was really surprised by this record. I thought this album was going to have perhaps a little bit more folk influence, and it's more black metal driven. But the vocals, the lyrics, the overall theme of the record, the way the sound is combined with those two elements is absolutely perfect. I love this rock and roll black metal driven sound. I love the grittiness of the vocals, and then when you have Viking themed lyrics, it's perfect. It's the cherry on top as far as I'm concerned. So I love this record, and that's why I included this debut album in my top 20 list. At number 18, we have Sorcerer with Lamenting of the Innocent. If you're a fan of doom metal, you definitely have to check out this album. Very cohesive, very balanced, top to bottom. No pivots, no dips, just consistency across every single track. It's a very well created, a very well constructed album that has a lot of strength on every single song. And it's an album that engages the listener, that keeps the listener engaged, it keeps the listener moving. It almost holds your hand as you progress through every single track on this record. So a very interesting album, a very strong album by Sorcerer. At number 17, another doom metal band, My Dying Bride with The Ghost of Orion. I love this record, I love this band. And I was extremely surprised with how strong overall this album is. Once again, an album that offers a lot of consistency and quality from top to bottom. An album that has absolutely no pivots, has no fillers. It's just great sound, great quality, great approach on every single track, and you're absolutely mesmerized by the overall soundscape and atmosphere that this album creates. At number 16, we have Dawn of Solace with Waves. Another record that's all about the atmosphere. It's all about the melancholy. It's all about the darkness, how it makes you feel, how it makes you look on the inside. And this album was released really early in 2020, and perhaps will go under the radar for some people, considering how long it's been since it's been released. It feels like an eternity ago, but the quality of this album stays true. This is a record that, at least for me, it stayed high on my playlist from the time it was released all the way up until now. It still feels fresh, it still has that quality, it still surprises you with every time that you press play on it. At number 15, we have August Burn Red with Guardians, an album that absolutely slaps you from the time you press play until the time you press stop at the end of the record. Now, there are some divots, there are some changes, there are some peaks and valleys as you progress this record. It's not an album that's necessarily pure aggression from the beginning all the way to the end, but the aggression that it has, the intensity that it has, it's packed in there, and almost it permeates to the songs that are perhaps a little bit more melodic, that take the foot off the gas. But overall, very strong album by August Burns Red, an album, like I said, that slaps you extremely hard from the top all the way to the bottom. At number 14, we have Oceans of Slumber with their self-titled Oceans of Slumber. And this album, in my humble opinion, is their best album to date. So if you're Oceans of Slumber and you're releasing their best album to date, I have to put you on my top 20 list. It's a must. This was an outstanding record. Musically and vocally, there's just absolutely nothing negative about this album. It's nearly perfect. Doesn't matter how you look at it. Soundscape, atmosphere, vocals, lyrics, lyrical content, song construction, track listing, everything about this album, it's really looked at the minor detail in order for the record to be as strong as it is. I said it on my review when I was listening to this album that these guys are the Opeth of North America, and I stand by that. This is an outstanding record, their best album to date. At number 13 comes Warbringer with Weapons of Tomorrow. This was my favorite thrash metal album of 2020. Nobody came even close. There was a lot of other great thrash metal albums this year. This was a great year for thrash metal, but Warbringer was just playing above the rim when they constructed this album. I was absolutely blown away by how melodic, how driven, how heavy, how gritty overall this album is, showing you a lot of diversity from these guys, that they're just not a one-trick pony. There's a lot of things they can do with their sound and keeping their Warbringer DNA alive, not changing too much, but just enough in order to give the listener something new, something fresh, but keeping that DNA absolutely intact. At number 12, it comes Green Carnation with Leaves of Yesteryear. This was my introduction to this band. I had never listened to this band before, and this album blew me away. I had absolutely zero expectations going in, but the moment I started listening to this album, I knew that I had to go back and listen to their previous records. This band is quality through and through, but they do it in a way that's so subtle. It's you almost don't notice how good they are because they don't do it in your face. They're not a band that tries to showcase their talent and how strong they are on all the different elements that make up a record. They do it in a very subtle kind of way, but it stays true within the record and allows the album to really gain a life of its own. At number 11, Sepultura with Quadra. This could be 10 plus because I was very close of moving this into my top 10 list, and I almost wish I had room to put this album on my top 10 list because this Sepultura album is their best release since Roots, at least to me. It's a really strong album. It's an album that gives you a glimpse into the past of the band, of what they did back then, what they've done all the way up until now, and also gives you a little bit of a picture of what the future holds for this band. So this album almost feels like a greatest hits without being a greatest hits because it has a little bit of everything that this band has been able to offer the fans throughout their career. At number 10, Death White with Grave Image. The moment I heard this album, this was one of the few albums that the moment that I heard it, I knew I had to have it in my top 10 list, and it was earlier in the year and I didn't care. I just knew that this album was going to be rock solid in my top 10 list because it's so strong. It has great atmosphere. It has a great presence. It has a great overall soundscape. The vocals are just outstanding. The vocals almost become a mist that merges with the overall atmosphere and soundscape of the album. And when you have a record that allows itself to have that sort of feel, that sort of vibe, that sort of delivery, it hits really close to home, and it's something that I really enjoy. I like to get lost in that sort of sound, and this album has all of those elements. At number 9, we have Nightwish with Human Nature. Really strong album from Nightwish. I really enjoy this record. This is an album that's perhaps divided a little bit of the fan base. There's people that absolutely love it and people that feel like it's not what the band used to be, but this is a band that's always evolving, that's always pushing the envelope, that's always trying new things, going in different directions. They're not a band that stands still and just lives off of the glory of the past. It's always a band that tries to do new things, that tries to reinvent themselves with every single record. Overall, I enjoy this album. I enjoy the creation of the album. I enjoy the theme of the album because this is not a concept record, but it's definitely a theme-driven album and a very important theme at that. So when you put all of these elements together, this album had to be in the top 10 list. At number 8, Convent with Puritan Masochism. This is the band's debut record. Another band that the moment I heard this album, I knew I could care less what other albums are going to be released. This record has to be in my top 10 list. I love this album. I could play this album every day and never get tired of it because the sound is just so strong. It has so much aggression built into it. It has so much anger. It's driven. It's melancholic. It's doomy at times, but it's also powerful in others. It has this incredible duality of being slow moving, carrying this melancholic atmosphere, and at the same time being so in your face, so aggressive that you just can't walk away from it. I love this band. I love this record. What an incredible debut album by Convent. At number 7, Seven by Mors Principium Est. These guys always deliver incredible records. The question is going to be, where is it going to fall on your list. Because if you're putting a top 10 or top 20, top 30, whatever top it is, you almost have to include a Morse Principium Est on that list if they have released an album in that year. This album is outstanding. Andy Gillian, incredible musician. The way he crafts the songs, the way he puts tracks together, and then how he brings them all to life in order to create an album that is just mesmerizing. Great melodies, great keyboard melodies, great guitar solos, great guitar melodies, great leads, incredible vocals by Ville. He always brings the intensity to the table. He always brings a lot of aggression to how he delivers every single song. This album has everything that we've come to expect from Morse Principium Est. At number 6, Orbit Culture with Naya. What a record. This album surprised a lot of people. People who were not paying attention to the band were surprised. People who are already into the band were still shocked with how strong, how balanced, how cohesive, how overall dominating this album is, musically and vocally. Just an outstanding record. There's not one single bad song on this album. It's just a very strong record from this band, top to bottom. I love Orbit Culture, and this album did not disappoint in the least. This is an album that you had high expectations coming in based on the singles, and the album surpassed those expectations. Not something that happens every day. At number 5, we have Draconian with Under a Godless Veil. Draconian, an album that I was waiting for, patiently waiting for most of the year for this release, and when it got here, I was in heaven or in hell or in limbo, whatever you want to be when you listen to Draconian. But it definitely takes you to a very specific place. It definitely takes you to a very specific state of mind when you listen to these guys, and specifically when you listen to this album. I love the duality of the vocals that this record has to offer. I love the fact that Heki gets a lot more playtime as far as the overall album is concerned. She definitely gets the keys to the car when it comes to this record. It's just a very strong album that keeps all the elements of Draconian alive, and then introduces us to some new ones that really allow the album to feel fresh, to feel new, but still keep that core DNA absolutely intact. At number 4, Paradise Lost with Obsidian. This record is incredible. This is one of the best Paradise Lost albums in perhaps 2 decades. It's just a really strong album, an album that is borderline perfect from the beginning all the way to the end, and how it's executed and how it's constructed and how the tracks are coming together. The strength of the drums on this album are out of this world. They're just so strong, they're just so powerful, and at the same time taking absolutely nothing away from the overall construction, from what the guitars have to give you, from the atmosphere that the album has in store for the listener. And then when you put on top of all of that incredible vocals, incredible delivery, and incredible lyrics that come to life with every single song, you have one of the best albums of the year. At number 3, Insomnium with Thalassic. This was a great record. Absolutely incredible record. Adding a second vocalist to the band was a stroke of genius. It really moved this album. It really moved the needle as far as Insomnium is concerned. You may have wondered, where was this band gonna go? The previous records were good, but they were not necessarily outstanding. And a lot of people were looking back into the past of the band and wondering if they could duplicate the success that they had with the earlier records. This album takes a little bit of everything that they have done right, and then it adds something on top of it. Having 2 vocalists will definitely push the needle, will definitely move this band into the right path, and this is an album that puts them back into the map, puts them back into the discussion of one of the best metal bands in the world. This album is absolutely outstanding. At number 2, Finntroll with Vredes de Vad. I absolutely butcher that name, and that's okay, but I love this record. This is a very strong album from Finntroll. After such a long hiatus, a band that hasn't released an album in such a long time, the expectations are always high, and sometimes they're so high that it's just unattainable. It doesn't matter how good an album is, you always feel like that album is never going to meet that plateau, those expectations that you set for the record, considering how long you've been waiting for it. This album met those expectations, and in my opinion surpassed those expectations. This is flawless record top to bottom. Some records on this list are near perfection. This one is perfect. And finally, at number 1, Dark Tranquillity with Moment. This is a record that has quality written all over it. It doesn't matter how you look at it, it doesn't matter how you play it. This is just an album that's going to stand the test of time, not only for the band, but for the genre itself. It's a magnificent record. A lot of people would say that's perhaps not, there's not enough grittiness, there's not enough power, there's not enough from the guitars as far as driving the sound forward. I disagree. The guitars are still pushing the sound forward. They're just not necessarily in your face throughout the whole experience. You have to learn how to appreciate the layers that this record has and how it's put together, and still offer you that dark Tranquillity sound, but package and deliver it in a different way, in the more subtle way that allows you to appreciate everything else that is happening and not just gravitate towards one single element. That is the beauty of this record, and that is the energy that this album has, is to feel very simple but be very complex at the same time. That is what sold me on this album. I absolutely love it, and the moment that I listened to it, I knew that I was listening to the best album of 2020, at least in my humble opinion. Once again, guys, I want to hear from you. I want you to use the comment section below to let me know what your favorite albums of 2020 are. I'm sure your list will be much different from mine, and I'm sure we'll agree to disagree on these lists, but it's always a fun exercise. So let me know what your favorite albums are. Let's have a discussion on why this album made the list and why this album didn't make the list. And like I said before, maybe I'll discover some albums that went under the radar. But for now, this is it. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay brutal, handbangers. Take care.